Hello, this is Jyoti Dodia. Welcome to today's webinar session on the Power Technical Webinar Series. I'm so pleased to have Tim Rowe deliver this session for us. He's back after almost a year out, or more than a year out on this series, but always very welcome. So today's session is REST APIs for direct DB2 access. And you may want to look up session 74 in the series where Tim delivered a session on REST APIs and IBMI and Watson. So without further ado, let me hand over to Tim.
Thank you so very much, Jyoti. I'm very happy to be back here again. We're really excited about some new functionality that we've added to our integrated web services support that's part of the operating system. And so as Jyoti mentioned, session number 74, I spent really talking about creating REST APIs using more traditional back-end RPG, COBOL programs and service programs. And this is taking things in a slightly different direction. But before we kind of dive into the nuts and bolts, I do want to spend just a few minutes really covering a little bit about what is this stuff. So going to start a little bit of high level, just a brief introduction about APIs, a little bit about SOAP and REST, just so you kind of understand where this stuff all fits. And then we're going to dive into this REST API and SQL kind of things. And we're going to do quite a bit, actually, live demos, because it's just more fun that way. And you can kind of see how things work. One of the things that's part of this particular presentation is everything I have in here will allow you to take this home today, later, and do it yourself on your machine. So everything, I have all the information you need, all the demo stuff, it's all part of the presentation. So you'll be able to actually then go start to play and maybe figure out how to incorporate this into your daily businesses. So first off, right, why do we care about these REST APIs? Because we need to be able to make connections. This is especially true more and more in the worlds that we live in today when we're dealing with both mobile and web interfaces. My mobile interface is a separate computer that's connected via a TCP/IP connection in many respects, but it's via a virtual connection. But I need to go get data from wherever. And these are where REST APIs can come into play. An API, and I kind of find this term actually rather humorous in a way, because what's old is new and what's new is old. They continue to reuse the same terms over, and they just kind of mean new things. We've had the term API, an application program interface. That term has been around for years and years and years. And we have system APIs that are part of the IBMI operating system. That's how you get information, or traditionally have gotten information from IBMI for years. And of course, if you go to Wikipedia, they give you a great big, huge, long programming example, but I like to simplify things. And so I've kind of simplified my definition of an API is really nothing more than a simple way to connect endpoints. It's really about having some form of a request and a response. I'm asking for data, I'm getting data returned. I'm giving data, and data will be updated. So it's a way to connect things together. And in today's world, many times now when people refer to APIs, they're actually not referring to what you might want to consider traditional APIs. They're really starting to refer as really a REST API. So when we think about APIs, APIs have come from the web services realm, right? That's where this stuff got its origins in that respect, right? Web services were the big term, and services-oriented architecture, SOA, was part of the conversation, 15 years ago. And a service or an API is some form of a repeatable task. I mean, it's breaking things down into small components that are easily reusable. We've then also taken the concept of services and APIs and created microservices, and that's nothing more than a service that's at its smallest fundamental building block. And the whole availability of these services, whether they're APIs or microservices or SOAP or REST, whatever the whole concept is such that it's accessible via a web connection. And that's the key piece of this, to be able to, from your applications, be able to get information with a web request. Okay, couple minutes, SOAP versus REST, just so you understand what some of the differences are between these and kind of why the world's been transitioning more towards the REST side of things. Simple Object Access Protocol is what SOAP stands for. It exposes operations that implement logic. So the paradigm for this really aligns well with your existing business applications, especially if you've gone through any form of a modernization process and things of that nature. It allows you to take service programs or programs that you've created and be able to expose those, and that would be then the operation. So if we think about a basic application, I have got things like get list, get user, update user, add user, delete user. Those are all kind of operations. It's also got an entire protocol built around it that provides really kind of a framework and a governance and a type of a presentation categories around these things to kind of really kind of tie things in tight. It's also XML based, right? That's the technology that was in existence when these were created. If we transition over here to REST, REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It isn't technically a protocol, it's actually an architectural style. So there's really no governing body that's dictated what a REST API should look like, other than the community has kind of settled upon a set of pseudo rules that kind of help define these. A couple things about REST. They're resource driven. They're really built completely around the HTTP specifications. So you only get what is available in HTTP as your REST operations, if you will. So as opposed to, get ID or delete user, instead we have a get, put, delete, post. That's all we have. And then we need to then build our resources to fit into how these resources are driven. And we'll kind of talk about what that means in a little bit, but different paradigm on how these are done. Every single request is via an HTTP or a request. It's a hyperlink. That's how all REST APIs are driven, which makes it really fascinating and very useful when you start referring to leveraging this for modern applications or mobile applications. Also, it uses JSON versus XML as its data transport protocol. So that kind of makes a difference in the data packets that get sent back and forth between your endpoints. Okay, so why one versus the other in today's world? Both are still very valid. There's a great reason to use either one. We've got thousands of users that leverage this support today. Both SOAP and REST are still used. Obviously, REST is becoming a little bit more the focus, and certainly an area that people are starting to invest in. Some of that just being the fact that it's going to be a bit more simplistic. The packet size is a bit different, and it becomes very seamless from that HTTP perspective and languages like JavaScript. Okay, just a quick example on the differences between a SOAP and a REST. When I talk about an operation versus a resource. In SOAP, my operation is things like get state or set state for my service, which is light bulb management. And I have to pass in a light bulb ID, I get it back, the state, etc. Now, if I was going to redo this example in a resource-driven event versus an operations-driven event, my resource, in this case, would be a light bulb. That's what I'm dealing with. And I can pass in the light bulb that I'm interested in as part of that resource. I then have operations, things like get and post. I can get the information or I can change the information. Slightly different way of doing things. Now, if we look at what's actually sent over the line, in SOAP, I've got XML. I also have a contract information. So in the beginning, I have a bunch of information that's part of the SOAP protocol. I then have my XML envelope that passes in the information about the operation that I'm calling, as well as the needed information that's there. Then, if I look at REST, slightly different, right? There's no contract information. I have my resource, and I have my host. It's pretty much a significant change in the amount of data that's actually sent in between these two particular entities. Okay, our integrated web services support is something that's been on the IBMI for quite some time. It actually first shipped in, I think it was like 2007 or something like that, in 546171. It's been part of the operating system for a long time. The good news is pretty much all the code that we shipped in 2007 we've thrown away and we have redone, because the world of web and REST and SOAP has changed dramatically since we started doing this back then. This is the modern web-based world. It changes every other couple days, it seems. So we continue to very much reinvent and enhance this particular support. All of our information, I've got the web links there. I believe that's still the current URL for our product information. Okay. Logistics. Before we dive into actually creating one of these and seeing how these things play together, let's look at the different pieces that fit in, because in order to be successful with, web and all these kind of things and REST APIs, you need to understand how they're all connected together. Obviously, we have an internet connection. From the internet, my external application is going to have a URL that it's going to connect with, right? In this example, I'm going to get some information from a system. When I pass in a URL, there needs to be a web server that's going to listen and catch that URL. So we have an HTTP server. That HTTP server is part of the IBMI, has been for since 2001 is when we first started shipping that. That HTTP server is going to be listening for the URL request. It's going to then process it and pass it to the application server. The application server is actually a Java web-based server running on our IBMI box that actually needs to process the information coming in from the HTTP protocol, from the HTTP request. In an HTTP request, you can have all sorts of information. I can pass in input parameters. I can pass output parameters. All of that stuff is built in that HTTP layer. On IBM, if I'm going to then call some kind of an IBMI program, or as we're going to talk about, call an SQL statement, I need to be able to parse input information from the HTTP and pass it to the backend code in a way that it actually understands. And that's what this application server is going to do. It's going to pull out the necessary pieces from the HTTP request and use it to then call our endpoints. Well, we have a couple different choices for endpoints. Our existing support, which is RPG or COBOL, programs or service programs, or an SQL statement. And so this application server is going to leverage and create the right entity and set up, of course, the right connection to then call the program and do its business. So that's the IWS support is really this whole application server and HTTP server. That's what this support is that we provide, and we provide ways to help you easily create the connections to the HTTP to these back-end entities that we're after. Okay. Today, this is the support that we talked about in number 74 in the previous one. We have a REST connection. We connect to an IBMI. Our integrated web services server will then take care of processing and calling these RPG, COBOL, Java, C, CL programs, whatever the case may be. It's been working great for a very long time, but many applications may also want to connect to the database directly. So if I'm going to then get, a simple example is I want to get a list of all the users, or I want to get a list of a particular set of users. That's something that's very easily done in SQL. So why not do it in SQL versus doing it in an RPG program? And so today, in the past, you needed to then have a JDBC or ODBC connection to the IBMI so that you could pass that SQL in. And again, it's worked just fine. The problem is now I've got two connections that I need to create to my IBMI. Is that the end of the world? No, but there are better ways to do things. So what we added in our recent delivery, this was added in June of this year, we now allow you to pass in the SQL information that you're interested in, or basically I'm going to call a REST connection, and I'm going to use only the HTTP connection. I no longer need JDBC or ODBC to externally connect to my IBMI. We're going to take and manage all that for you as part of our IWS server. This is what we're going to focus on for the rest of this particular session. Okay. Additionally, you can, with our latest support, also leverage multi-tier. So if I look at this example, I can have one IBMI LPAR that has my HTTP and IWS server on it. I can have a completely separate IBMI that's got my RPG COBOL or my database on it. So I don't have to have all of this running on the same LPAR anymore. I can actually leverage a multi-tiered environment. And we'll talk a little bit about this as I go through the example as well. Okay. Some of the pieces, parts, I've talked a little bit about these. Apache, that's our HTTP server. Our IWS server is built on something called Liberty. Liberty is the IBM WebSphere's answer to Apache Tomcat. It is a lightweight, it really is truly a lightweight Java web container. Works fantastic. We actually ship it as part of the operating system, so it's always there and available. Our REST and SOAP infrastructure is built on a package called JAX-RS or JAX-WS. Years ago, it was actually built on something called the Access 2 protocol. But the Access protocol, which was new and modern when we first started, nobody actually updated. And the more latest, more accepted one in today's world is the JAX support. IWS then also is going to be creating and deploying a Java application, a program that we're going to deploy into the web container. It's the one that handles the input-output conversations and also calls the backend, whether it's the ILE program or calling the SQL statement. When we talk about doing this work, right, I'm going to show you how to do everything with the GUI interface, primarily because it makes a pretty good demo. It's easy to help you understand this, and it works actually very, very well. But if you're going to leverage this in a more production-like environment, you absolutely can. You can also do all of this support in a programmatic manner. We have a full library of scripting capabilities that are all part of the IWS server. And if you go out to our website, there's a link near the bottom. There's two different, they're basically like red books that are there. One talks about how to deploy and manage IWS servers, which is what we're talking about today. And there's one, it's the programming guide for the IWS client support. And the client support is taking this conversation and changing the endpoints. In our conversation today, I'm talking about from the web, connecting to an IBMI and calling and accessing data on the IBMI. The client support is talking about starting from the IBMI and calling out and accessing somebody else's REST API that may be anywhere out on the interweb. And that's an entirely different part of the conversation, but also provided as part of the IBMI operating system for you as well. Okay. When we're doing REST, you've got homework that you need to do. You need to figure out some things before you kind of get into this. I need to identify my RPG, my COBOL. I need to identify my SQL statements. You know, what am I going to be calling and leveraging from the IBMI? I need to figure out how I'm going to map these operations into resources. So I need to figure out what are the HTTP methods I'm going to use. Right? So this is get, post, put, delete. I need to map those. I then also need to determine, do I need any URI identifiers? Right? What am I going to call these things? Do I need something in particular? Additionally, I am getting information from an HTTP input. Where is that content coming from? What is the content type that's being sent? This is, you may need to have a conversation with your web developers to help understand that. But they can be passing in form data and query data and parm data. I might want to get information from the HTTP header itself, and that's all possible. But I need to understand where that data is so that I can map that HTTP content to the parameters that are on either my programs or service programs or my SQL statements. And then what am I returning back to that end user? What is that data and how do I want to have that format? These are all parts of the conversation that you need to understand in order to successfully create REST APIs. Our team lead for the REST API support, Nader, he has created basically a lot of this content that we're going to talk about. We have an article that should be published any day now. It should be out on our developer works site that is going to show you how to create and leverage basic SQL for doing a basic application. I want to be able to register new students. I want to then edit the information. I want to get the list of all the students. I want to get information about a specific student. And then, of course, I want to delete them. Now, this could all be code that you would have written using an RPG service program, where I could have service programs for each of these that are connecting to the database. Or in this particular case, we're going to actually take it to the pure SQL level and do it directly from that perspective. So when we talk about getting started, right, I've mentioned this already. I need to understand where I'm going to get my input. Path, matrix, query, form, HTTP headers, cookies. These are things that are really important to understand, because you're going to get asked these questions as you kind of go through the update and the wizard to get this stuff set up. As far as my homework that I've done, well, we've created a little table here. I've got my HTTP methods, get, post, put, delete. I've got a URI context, right? My context is students. That's my URI. And I'm going to have a description, right? I mean, this is what each one of these is intended to do. I now need to figure out what is the SQL that I'm going to use for each of these methods that I'm interested in. Well, here we go. I've provided all the SQL for you. So if I'm going to have a resource called, get all, which is I'm going to get the list of all of the students, well, then I have some very simple SQL there. Select students, select from my student database file. My get, my add, if you look at actually the bottom four, you'll see we're passing in parameter information. I have a select for get ID. I have a select from my student database where my student ID equals question mark. Well, because I want to pass that information in. And so I can add that as a parameter. Likewise, an add, I got to pass in all the information about a particular student that I'm interested in adding into the thing. So I have 4 parameters in this case, and etc. Okay, so to get started, first thing we need to do is we need to go over to our friend IBMI Access Client Solutions. I hope you are all using this on a very regular basis. This is the tool for accessing and managing your IBMI in today's world. I've got my IBMI that I'm interested in. I mean, I've got many, but I'm going to go to our common one, .frankandi.com system. Thank you to Larry Bolheis and Pete Masiello for providing this support for us as we do lots of demos on this. I'm going to go to my Run SQL scripts. So if I click on Run SQL scripts, I get a lovely Run SQL scripts window. Oh, sorry, here that I can go connect and play with. One of the reasons I want to just take a minute to talk and show you this stuff is in my insert from examples. I've got stuff that I've created for me. I've got my demo scripts here. So if I click on this link, I've got a set of information here called REST SQL Setup. And so if I take and just insert that into here, you'll notice that the information that I now have in here looks remarkably similar to what I have on my PowerPoint slide here. That's because I copied it from the PowerPoint slide to here. But this is where I would now be able to go and create my library, create my table, and I can start the process of giving me a couple populate students that I'm going to populate into that particular table. This is where you want to go and do that. And so I can, again, I recommend leveraging this. You can use Run SQL scripts for many, many things. If I wanted to create and save my own things, all I need to do is go into this category and create my own category. These categories are all what shows up here. So these ones that I've created here, these are all categories that I've created for me. Lug, Mind, Beijing, Japan, etc. And then I give it a description, REST SQL Setup. Well, I showed you that in here already, right? If I have my demo scripts, there's my description. And so anytime you save a file with this information at the top onto your in my case, my PC, where I have my Run SQL scripts located, this magically shows up here in my insert from examples. And so I can use this to do all sorts of things. Additionally, one thing just to be aware of, if I come over here to Create Lib and I hit my old good friend PF4 to do some prompting, you'll see that I can prompt on my CL commands, and I can get all the information about a CL command, and I can specify and enter it through a prompting capability. Okay, enough about that. I've now set up my test environment. I've got a database table out here. If I were to go back to here for just a moment, let me do a select all from here. Select from, of course, it would help if I got that value right. Select from student DB. Select splat from student. Select splat from. I don't want to do that. My demos. I'm going crazy on the demo here. There we go. Slow down, and there we go. Now if I go to run that, oh, what's it not liking now?
It's the semicolon, I think.
No, actually, I didn't set the path for this. I'm trying to call student ID. Look at that. I didn't give it a context for what I'm after. There we go. So now you can see there's my table that I've created, and you can see it here in Run SQL scripts. All right, let's keep moving on to our calling these from a REST perspective. One of the points to be aware of with the integrated web services support, if you're going to use it, you're going to use the GUI, you need to have splat all object or splat IOSys config special authority in order to leverage the HTTP GUI. That's been the traditional security requirements for many, many years. We've added permission support. And this is something that was been put in quite some time ago. If I go over to my Web Admin GUI today, if I go here to the Advanced tab, it timed out. There we go. Let's go over to Advanced tab. Under here, we have something called permissions. And here is where I can actually assign a user without those high level of support of authority to have permission to use the integrated web services server, where I can create and deploy services. So if I have a user that has just user special authority, no worries. You have somebody who is an administrator sign on to the Web Admin GUI and give that user permission. And now they'll be able to successfully create and use this support. All right. So first things we need to do is we need to go create a container. So I'm going to go click this button here, Create Web Services Server. And I'm going to go create the basic web infrastructure that we're going to use for this particular demo. So I'll, let's say UK event, because that's what I'm working on right now. And we'll click Next. So we're going to go and carve out a set of ports for you. We're going to make certain that the ports that we select both here as well as these other locations are currently not used on this particular machine. You can change them now, so I could put whatever I want in here, or you can change them later as well. I like to recommend just leave these alone because you want to make certain that it works and you don't have a port conflict. I'm creating a set of jobs. I'm creating a web server. That web server needs to run under a particular user profile. Whatever you do, don't use something like QSIC offer or use a profile that has all object user authority. I can either use my default ID that we ship with the machine, or I could go specify an existing user ID, or if I have the authority, I could go create a new one. In my case, I'm just going to take the default because I don't need any special authority for the entire server job itself. So we'll click Next. We're going to create both a web server and the HTTP server. And both of these is what we're going to done. When I click Finish, we're going to go off and we're going to go create this process. Now, I laugh at this because, years ago when we used to do these events, to do this stuff, it used to take us, probably about 5-10 minutes to get these servers created. As you just see, the servers are now created and they're up and running and active. So these things actually run significantly faster and take just seconds to create in today's world, which is nice. Now, I've got a web server, a web services server up and running called UK Event. We actually ship a service as part of this for you. We ship our Convert Temp. It's a SOAP-based API. The reason we ship this is to help you make certain that this server is actually working correctly and is connectable from the outside world. So I can take and easily go call this particular SOAP API, right? There's my WSDL document. I have my convert SOAP information is all in here. I can go and specify pass this WSDL document into a tool such as SOAP UI and call it and make certain that the entire set of ports are open and working and everybody's happy. So now that I have my environment set, let's go about creating a new REST API. So I click on the deploy link. This screen has changed from what it was in the past. I can now specify either REST or SOAP, and I can now specify whether I'm going to leverage a program or a service program or SQL. For our example, we're just going to go straight with the SQL, and we'll go ahead and click Next. So question that just popped up is, can we create web server through the green screen? Well, the answer to that is you can create. There's no CL commands for this, period. We actually have provided a set of scripts. Those scripts, which are going to be run basically through a QShell environment, will allow you to create the servers and deploy web services through there as well. As far as an interface, this is a web-based thing that we're creating. It's being created for use in the world of the web. So we actually created a web interface to do this. Additionally, from a strategic perspective, we probably won't be creating very many CL commands going forward. With most of the new stuff that we're delivering, we're actually using SQL services to actually control and leverage and do those communications as opposed to commands. We find it significantly better. Okay, so now I've got my new service that I want to deploy. So my resource that I want to create here, the resource name is going to be students. Service description, SQL is fine. My URI path, I believe that should be just fine as well. And if you want to check to make certain that I'm doing this right, in our presentation, if I scroll down here a little bit, right, I created the server. I got all the screens that I've put in here for you, so you can actually kind of see and follow along as we go to make certain that we're specifying this right. So there's my students, my SQL stuff. If I click next, if we went back to, let me go back to a picture here that I created right there for you. Yep, let's go back to this one. If you notice on the bottom right-hand corner, we have this thing, this JDBC connection. In order to access the database, the only way to really do that is with JDBC or ODBC. We're going to use a JDBC connection, but the difference is that JDBC connection is running local on the IBMI. So we establish a JDBC connection using localhost. It allows that database server job that's on the IBMI to do its work as if it was a local request. So really provides a very fast and nice way to go about doing this. So I'm going to leave my request as localhost because my database and my web server are all on the same IBMI. If I was going to do things in the multi-tiered environment, which is this, where I have two different IBMIs, on this page here, I would specify for my database system, as opposed to localhost, I would specify the host name for the machine that actually has that database on it. Now, my default schema, I could use library list. I actually am going to specify the actual schema name itself, just so we make certain that we get to the right place. So my schema name, I'm going to go pull that from my ACS so I don't have to type things. And I can go paste that in. So my student SRC is the schema that I'm actually pointing at. And then, so great question. The question just came up. If I use Splat Libel, where does it get the list of libraries from? So this particular job, you can specify the libraries for the library list. So when we call this, that library list would then get specified from there. I could also use an authenticated user. So the HTTP server can be leveraged to use and authenticate the request coming in, where you need to have that user authenticate. And then you'd use the actual library list from that authenticated IBMI user profile. So the library list, I'll show you that screen that's coming up here later. With SQL, I can do either SQL or system naming conventions. I'm going to leave it as the SQL based, and we'll go ahead and keep on moving along. So here's where I need to specify the SQL statements that I'm actually interested in creating as a service. So if I click Add, in this case, I need to go add in some of these services. So if I look at my homework page that I created, let me go find it. There it is. Here's my SQL that I'm interested in. I'm going to just end the slideshow just for a second so I can copy and paste a little bit easier from here. So if I do select from student DB, I should be able to then go paste that in. And my procedure name for this one was get all. So get all. And then I can click continue. And it didn't like it because it doesn't like the paste. That's what it doesn't like. It doesn't like it when I paste from PowerPoint into here. It gets a little bit funny on me sometimes. So we'll just do it the old-fashioned way, and you guys get to watch me type poorly. From STUD student DB. Now if I hit continue, look at that, it's going to be much happier. So now I've got one service that I've specified. Is it possible to set the schema name as part of the web service request? Is a question that came in. I believe it is. I would have to go double check on where that gets specified. For the sake of keeping moving, I'm going to only add one more here. So I'm going to add the add into my service just for the sake of typing. So if I'm going to add in the add procedure, I wanted to do an insert into STUD student DB, and then I need to specify the list of parameters that have been defined on that table. So student ID, first name, last name, and gender. And then values, because I want to pass these in, we're going to give myself a bunch of question marks. Oh, get the bracket going the right way.
I think you also missed a bracket after gender.
Oh, but you know, how am I supposed to show the fact that when I click continue, gives you error validation if you're trying to correct me as I'm typing?
I was trying to save you time. Sorry.
No,
Shut up.
I was just using it because I could. You're quite right.
I'm not the only one that spotted it.
No, exactly. Now, if I also were to type in one of these names incorrectly, because these names are actually case sensitive, so if I typed in first name here, right, it would yell at me and tell me first name is not in the student, it's not in the table. That's not a valid parameter name or column name. So it's smart enough to go validate and check on that stuff. So there we go. When I click continue, it's going to take and give me default values for these question marks in the form of parameters. Well, if I want to customize this a little bit and make it look prettier and actually technically more correct, right? This is where I can then now pass in the actual names of the parameters that I want to use. I'm going to use the actual same names of the column names just to help me alleviate confusion here. So student ID, I have first name, we have last name, and we have gender. And there we go. Those are all cleaned up. If I were to, when I add a service, just click next here at the bottom, I wouldn't get the opportunity to then change my parameter ID. I would have to come back to this page. So just be aware of that. This is one of the ways, it's kind of the way the GUI happens to work to allow you to catch these and modify those. Now, if I wanted, I could go add all the rest of these into here. For the sake of, you know, time expediency, you don't need to watch me type all of these. I think you kind of get the idea, but let's just go with these two for now. We can always go add more later if we have time. So I'm going to click next. So now I need to go through and start to tie the pieces together. I've identified the two procedures. I've identified my SQL statements and parameter information for each of the procedures. But now I've got some more work to do because I need to tie these to both the HTTP resource request and also specify how some of the SQL will actually be processed, because there's things that you can control, right? So here, do I want a multi-set, single set, media resource? You have options on how you want things returned. So if I've got a CLOB in my database table that has some kind of a PDF or something like that, right, I can specify a media resource and I can return that actual image if I wanted to. Is there anything here? SQL state information in response. On errors, I want that to return as an errors. I want to treat any type of warnings that I get along the way as an actual SQL error, which means that will get passed back to my end user application. I could also create a user-defined error message if I wanted to. Now, in the particular case of get all, let me just go make certain that I'm not forgetting something here. Because once we can actually control the SQL statements that get returned. So there's update, there's get by ID, there's remove, update, add, get all. Oh, I went too far. Oh, there is no, okay. This is what I'm talking about here. On these SQL return codes, I can actually customize the SQL return codes to return different return codes as success or failures. Get all, we'll just leave these alone. But on insert, I might want to do something a little different, because if I look at my insert, a 201 SQL code is create. Well, I don't want that to be returned as an error. I want to actually return a created as successful. So that's where I can specify 201 here, and that'll make that a bit happier. So now I've specified some information about the SQL itself. If I click next, I'm going to get the actual resource methods that I want to specify. Now, get all should be kind of obvious. It's a get request, right? Those are my choices, but get makes the most sense. URI, path template for method, whatever. My return date, my return data, I can return it as JSON. I can return it as HTML if I wanted. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to actually return this as HTML, and we'll show you what that looks like when we go to test this out. If I click next, I'm going to get to my add. Well, add is obviously not a get method. It's going to be a post. So I'm going to post the information. I want to, my media types I'm going to pass in are actually going to be JSON. Now, there's also one other thing that I need to specify here. Let me come down to this add page. Okay. I'm going to pass it as a set of parms. So because I'm doing that, I'm going to just specify wrap the input parameters. I do not need to specify each individual one in this particular case, because I'm going to be passing it in as a JSON input file. Again, that's just how we chose to do it for this particular example. Now, when I click next, I need to specify, what user ID is this stuff going to be coming from? In this case, do I need to have a special user ID that has access to that database table? Am I going to use an authenticated user ID? For my example, I can just use my WS service because it has the necessary authority to access that particular database table, so I can leave that one happily alone. And there we go. We've created all the information we need. There's my service. I have all my JDBC properties information. I can also specify the different methods that I'm going to be creating, and when I click Finish, we're going to go create the Java application, and we're going to deploy that to this particular service. It takes just a couple seconds for this to get done. It probably takes longer for us to create the apps and install them than it actually does to create the server itself.
While it's doing that, just a quick reminder to everyone, if you've got any questions or comments, I see some of you have been posting into the chat window. Please continue to do that. Select to everyone so we can all see the questions. Okay.
So we've gone ahead and we've got this created. Now, for the REST APIs, we've created a document that describes this. And so the Swagger document is actually something you could pass to your users that are going to be calling this, and it contains, look, all the information I need about these particular REST APIs that I've just created. It includes the URL, it includes the base path, what the definitions are, et cetera, et cetera. Everything you need is all right there. So now that I've got this up and created, let's go take a look at one of these for just a minute. So if I were to go call my base URL path students, so I'm just going to copy this, and let's go open up a new window. So I've got a new window that I've created, a new browser window. If I drop that URL in and just hit go, I've called by default the get all REST API. And it's gone out and it's retrieved remarkably. If I were to look at this list, right? Where's my, there they are. There we go. It's remarkably the same. The difference is, as opposed to just a table returned in my ACS run SQL scripts, I actually formatted this with HTML. And so I've got a prettier web page. I could have also formatted this to return it in straight JSON. That's where you have a choice in that particular REST API. Okay, we got a couple of questions. How do we know we have made this available? Well, once it's up and running here, it's now available. That's.
I think Patrick means, how do they know if they've got these services able to be deployed if you've got a new system? I might be wrong, but I think that's.
Well, the information about the services are going. That's where the Swagger document comes into view as well. That's the information about each service. Oh, available to us, a PTF. Yes, it's all the HTTP PTF group. So if you want this information, it's in the latest HTTP PTF group. That'll give you this level of support. Can we set up out of the gate for services, or do we have to create a file? I'm not certain I understand what that question is. I created an example database table, but you can use one that's already existing to access it. It doesn't really make any difference. It doesn't care, because I'm going to specify when I create the REST API through the JDBC connection which database table I'm actually interested in. The question was, is there a way to format the HTML returned? No. That's where you can then do a return to this JSON, and you can have your application create the HTML doing it that way. This is just a quick and dirty kind of thing. Can we see the post demo? So if I come into...
And while Tim is doing that, just a quick answer the question about the slide deck being available after the presentation ends. Yes, when I post the replay information, the information will be in there. So yes, that will be available hopefully later today. Thanks.
So I just stopped my service, and I clicked on the redeploy button, because now I can come in here and I can type in update. If I go look at what my update should look like, let's go look at update. I'm going to pull this down into a different screen here for a second, just so I can more easily type in what I'm after. And then I'll put that back up. So update. And then I'm going to do an update student DB set first name equal question mark, comma, last name equal question mark, comma, gender. Question mark, where student ID equals question mark. Now let's see how much of a mess I made of this, and we can go clean it up. Oh yeah, I made a good sized mess of this. We need to put the quote around that. We'll put a quote around that. Yeah, I think that might just do it. Nope. Oh, yeah. There we go. It validates it. And our first parm is first name. Second parm is last name. My third parm, in this case, is gender. And this is student ID. Except it's not capitalized. Okay, there we go. Now I've updated and added that. When I click next, get all, that's good. Add, that's fine. Update. We'll leave that alone. Actually, I think there's one parameter we want to specify on here. Oh, going the wrong way. There's update 204. It means no content, so we'll put that there. My get update is a put request. And let's just make certain that we put JSON, and we're going to wrap our parameters. So I'll play JSON. Oh wait, I just messed up my get all. That was silly. I'll change it to JSON this time. I'll go out that way. Add, leave that one alone. Update. This is the one that's now a put request. And that's going to be JSON, and we're going to wrap it because it's going to be similar to what we had before. I click next, leave that alone, and click finish, and away we go. So now I've added a additional REST API to this particular to this guy. So let's let this deploy for just a second. It should take a second for it to get updated. It's stopped. We'll go ahead and click start on it. And we are up and running. If I go look at this, there's a couple things I want to show you in here. I can see the methods that I've created. I have get, I have add, I have update. I could actually see my Swagger document and I can actually edit it. So I can make minor changes to this, and it's not going to affect anything. My connection pooling, right? This is part of the JDBC connection pooling. How many jobs am I going to have on the IBMI side? Especially interesting when you start running this for some very high-end workloads. My JDBC properties. All the information about the JDBC property can be edited and updated right here as well. Okay.
So a few questions have popped up, Tim. You're able to take them now, or do you want to wait till the end?
I meant like select splat from table. Yeah, you could do that. Yes. I suppose in theory I could. Oh, QSys Infotet job. Oh, so my table is actually the student DB. So I'm not exactly certain what Patrick is asking for here.
I believe he's asking whether you could do the same sort of thing for the IBMI services tables that already exist in QSys 2.
Oh, well, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Well, let's go do that for a second. SQL. Next. Spool. Next. Localhost. Great. Leave that alone. If I click Add, we have a little button down here at the bottom of the table. Sorry. I changed my screen and it reset me to the beginning. I'll take just a second to get back to where I was. There's a button here at the bottom of the Add Services table called Insert from Examples. So if I look at this guy, I have my IBMI services. In this case, I want to go look at my top 10 spool consumers by user. Click OK. Spool. Continue. I've now used and added a SQL service. I could also go add another one if I wanted. If I go look at, let's look at all of my all object authority users that are on this machine. There we go. I've added 2 services into here. I don't care about anything specific for my spool. I don't care about anything specific for all object on this page. Both of these are GET requests. I'm going to return both of these in HTML just because they look prettier. But I can't use the QW service user profile because both of these actions require some different authorities to do that. So if I specify my user ID in this particular case, that'll work successfully. So we've deployed that off. Yes. So this can present any SQL statement as a REST API, including table insert, update, delete, merge, join table function catalog views, as long as the correct library system user authorities are in place. Yeah, the short answer to that is yeah, pretty much. You said the library list could come from the authenticated users. Do you mean the user's default library list is defined in the default job description? Yeah, that's correct. So it's the same as if the library list was set on the green screen when you sign in. That's a correct statement. So if I go look at this for just a brief second, here is my SQL services. My method, I have one here called spool. So if I go bring up a new browser window, and let's go dump in my URL in here. There we go. So I called an SQL service. And one thing that I've actually have been pretty amazed with is the performance of this stuff. Visually, I find the performance of calling it through the REST API faster than if I called the exact same interface from Run SQL scripts. It's crazy, but it's kind of cool. So the question is, the authenticated user option work? So you pass in on the HTTP request a user ID and password, and then that token will get passed on to the underlying services, and that's what it'll get using through the Java Toolbox support. Oh, yes. So the question is, can you show us an example of the JSON we must send in the case of the wrapped inputs? So I wanted to add another user to my database table, right? So I've showed you the existing content of the database table, but let's go over to my friend SOAP UI. SOAP UI is a tool that you can download freely from the internet that allow you to test these things. Let me go back to my table here for just a moment, because I set this up earlier, so I want to make certain I'm using the one that I just created versus the one that I played with earlier. So my user ID is 10290. So if I come over here and change that, 10290, my services are STUD students. It's my post method that I'm after. I've actually can now enter in some information. So this is a student. I'm going to change this. I'm going to change Sally to Jyoti. I'm not going to try to spell her last name, so we'll just keep it simple and say Smith. Sorry, Jyoti.
You have spelt my first name wrong as well.
Oh, okay, so it's not even you. So, you know,
I'll let it go.
Yeah. So now I've just clicked the little green arrow up here at the top, and I've added somebody who may or may not resemble Jyoti to the list of students. So if I come over here to my get results and just hit refresh on that again. What do you mean page couldn't be found? Did I change? Oh, I wonder if I messed up my if I messed this up when I messed up the get method. I'm pretty certain I did. So let's come over here to my to this for a second, and let's create. Let's do a get request. What is that going to do for me? Oh, I messed it up. I messed it up when I was in there doing the other stuff. Bummer. I don't know what I messed up on it, but when I redeployed this, I messed up the get all. You got to be careful when you create these things, because obviously it's easy to mess them up. But if I go to virtual, I think I have this guy up, and yeah, I do. I have this one running. I have a backup running. So if I were to just go do the same thing but from a different URL, there we go. Here's the JSON version of things. What do you mean Jyoti didn't get added? Well, that's not happy. So why didn't Jyoti get added? You could spend hours. That's the beauty of doing death by demo.
Is it the same schema or a different one?
Shouldn't make any difference. Oh, that's right. This one here, I created these as Parma 1. There we go. It's been added. Okay.
Great.
Yep, there we go. It's been added.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the basics of how this stuff all plays and works. Like I said, that's probably another thing that you may have just realized is on this particular machine, I've got several of these servers up and running. I've got virtual, I have UK. I can have multiple servers running that are doing the same kind of things, and you can then use load balancing if you need to balance the performance input from these things. I assume the post, put, delete, the only results you get back is the HTTP status. It's actually if you notice when I did the setup of the REST API, I actually specified a SQL return, the SQL return code to be sent back as an HTTP status. So I can get that SQL value sent back as an HTTP status request. What does the results look like for a statement that do not return rows? Guess I'm not certain, Jamie, what you're asking for there. Any other questions? I think we've pretty much covered all of the information. Can we build the QSH cans to build the server and deploy the services? Yes, you can. That's all available out in our on our user, on our product webpage. All the scripts, how to call them, all that information, all the programming information is in that document. Any other questions? The post, so the get returns an HTML list. It returns an HTML list because it'll return what I ask it to return. So if I come over to here for a minute, I go back into my managed deployed services and look at the properties on this. On my methods, you'll notice I actually specified my returned media types, in this case, as JSON. So, which is why that when I looked at this here, it returned a JSON table, not HTML. So it returns what you tell it. So I could return XML, I could return HTML. It's whatever you want it to be returned on this case. From a post perspective, there really is no output that's returned on a post. It's either successful or not, which is why I took this SQL successful SQL return code, and I'm returning that as part of my HTTP status code, and I'm returning that as a successful. So there is really no output that's returned, which is why when I was in my SOAP UI, when I ran that, you can see this is the right-hand side is the return information, and there's nothing returned there when I ran this particular update. Okay, any other questions?
I think you've handled all of them as we've been going through. So
I certainly tried to.
Thank you very much.
And I really want to thank all of you who have asked questions. It certainly have made it significantly more interesting.
Yeah, and thank you for trying out various things as they were requesting you to try. So it's brilliant to just be able to do demos on the fly.
I mean, this support works incredibly well. Obviously, as you noticed, it's easy to mess things up. Obviously, I messed something up when I redeployed the get all. So obviously, you need to take your time, which obviously I did not in that case, and pay attention to what you're doing. And the other thing is, right, the other big thing to keep in mind is if you get on, start doing this stuff at home, and you have questions along the way, right, shoot me an email. We'll help you through this because we want you to be successful with this.
Excellent. There is another question that's just popped up.
How would you diagnose what the actual issue is? Some of that information I don't remember if the details of that gets published in the HTTP response at all. Obviously, you could go back to the IBMI, and that information is going to be in the database server job that you connected to. It would be there as well. I know,
Great.
Not exactly ideal. But if you specify wrong information, like on a post, where I'm going to, well, post is an input. So if I mess something up drastically, well, that's one of the reasons we kind of protect you on when you create the SQL. We make certain that you enter in all of the field names correctly. So.
Yeah, some error checking goes on there.
Exactly.
Okay. Just in case anyone else has got any questions, please stay on for a minute or so. Post them into the chat window. I am going to be running the next session in October, most likely, 2nd of October, so save the date. The topic, etc., will be confirmed later. I'm just talking to the speaker currently, and we'll finalize that and send you information as soon as it's available. So if you've not registered, please send me an email, jyoti_dodia@uk.ibm.com. But of course, most people won't be able to spell my name, so I'll put it into the chat window.
I mean, obviously I can't.
So I'll put that into the chat window. But thank you all very much for joining. Are there any couple of questions, Tim? Palm input on a get, Patrick's asking. I'm not sure.
If you have your get SQL such that it requires input, then yeah, you can specify input. So for example, if you looked at the if I look at this guy, wait a minute, where's my homework page? There it is. I can do get by ID. So I can specify a input parameter on get, which is the student ID value. So that's absolutely possible.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for taking us through this, as always. And I'm sure that the people who couldn't join because they're on holiday will be watching the replay. So let me know as soon as you have the article published, and I'll make sure that the link is on the wiki page so any information can be publicized.
Oh, Jamie, you broke your promise. I'm disappointed in you. No,
I
I'm
broke
just
my
kidding.
promise?
No, Jamie did. Jamie said she promised last one, and then she asked another question. Can you use a URL search?
Oh,
Amity, I'm so sorry, Jamie. Do forgive me. You can use the URL search parameters. That's a good question. Try it out and let me know. I haven't played with that at this point.
Okay, brilliant. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for joining today, and thanks for your time, and we'll catch up with you on the next one. Thanks, Tim.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.